honest speech, the practice nobody wants to do and everyone needs. I want to start by telling you what this video is not about. It's not about being brutally honest with people. It's not about radical transparency. It's not about saying everything that crosses your mind in the name of authenticity. It is not about truth-telling as a moral performance, the person who prides themselves on always saying the hard thing, whether or not the hard thing is useful or kind or actually true. That's a different conversation and honestly not a very interesting one. This video is about something quieter and more personal than that. It's about the gap. The gap between what you actually think and what you say, between what you actually feel and what you express, between what you actually want and what you ask for, between who you actually are and who you present yourself to be. Most people are carrying a gap so wide, so habitual, they stop noticing it's there. And that gap, not the dramatic lies, not the big deceptions, but the accumulated weight of small daily misalignments is one of the most significant sources of interior depletion that exists. You don't feel it as dishonesty, you feel it as exhaustion, as a vague sense of not being quite present in your own life, as the low-grade alienation of spending a lot of time around people and still feeling fundamentally unknown. Honest speech is the practice of closing that gap. Not all at once, not dramatically, incrementally, deliberately, in the actual texture of your daily life. That's what this video is about. So let's look at what dishonesty actually costs. Before we talk about how to practice honest speech, we need to talk about what the alternative is actually costing you. Because most people are running a calculation, usually unconscious, that social dishonesty is free or close to it. A small tax paid for social harmony, professional safety, and relational ease. It isn't free. Here's what it actually costs. First, cognitive load. Every maintained performance requires ongoing management. Every version of yourself you're presenting that doesn't match the interior version requires a background process keeping track of the gap, making sure the performed version stays consistent, making sure the real version doesn't surface at the wrong moment. That background process runs constantly. You don't feel it as effort because it's automated, but it is consuming resources, attention, energy, processing capacity, all quietly redirected towards the maintenance of misalignment. People who begin practicing honest speech consistently report the same thing. A kind of mental spaciousness they didn't know was missing, as if something that was always running in the background finally stopped. Now, let's look at relational distance. When you present a performed version of yourself to people in your life, you create a specific and painful situation. You receive the responses to someone who is isn't quite you. Their warmth, their approval, their affection, it lands on the performance, not on you. And over time, even in relationships that look close from the outside, a deep loneliness develops. You're present but not known, engaged but not seen. That loneliness can't be fixed by more connection, more time together, more conversation. If the misalignment is still operating, more of it just deepens the isolation. The only thing that fixes it is contact, actual contact between cells, which requires honest speech to be possible. Third, self-estrangement. This is the subtlest cost and the most significant one. When you consistently say things that aren't true for you, consistently suppress what you actually think and feel and want, over time, you lose reliable access to your own interior. Not dramatically, gradually. You stop knowing clearly what you think about things because you've spent so long saying what's expected. You stop knowing what you actually want because you spent so long performing contentment. You stop trusting your own perceptions because you've spent so long overriding them in the service of social ease. The self-estrangement is the most expensive cost of chronic misalignment. Because everything else in this series, the frameworks, the practices, depends on having access to your own interior. Honest speech is what keeps that access open. Now, why don't we do it? If honest speech is this valuable, why don't we do it? The answer is laziness. It isn't moral failure, it is something more structural than that. We don't do it because we are trained not to. From early childhood, most of us receive a very clear and consistent signal. Certain truths are welcome and certain truths are not. Express the welcome ones and you receive connection, approval, safety. Express the unwelcome ones and you receive withdrawal, correction, disappointment. We learn quickly, efficiently, the way children learn survival, which version of ourselves was accessible. And we begin performing that version not as a choice, as an adaptation. The psychologist Donavon called this the false self. The constructed presentation assembled in response to the environmental demands, built for protection, maintained by habit. The tragedy isn't that it formed. It had to form. The tragedy is that most people never question it as adults when the condition that made it necessary no longer exists. You are no longer a child dependent on your parents' approval or survival. The boss's disappointment won't actually destroy you. The friend's discomfort with your real opinion won't end the relationship. Or, if it does, that's information worth having. But the nervous system doesn't know that. The nervous system still responds to social disapproval as if it were a survival threat, still fires the same alarm, say the same acceptable thing, maintain the performance, keep the connection, even when the actual stakes are low. So when people try to practice honest speech and find it nearly impossible, when they open their mouths to say the true thing and the performed thing comes out anyway, that's not weakness. That's a deeply conditioned reflex encountering conscious intention. The practice is the repeated, gentle, patient overriding of that reflex. Not through force, through presence. Notice in the moment, pausing, choosing. Every time you do that, notice, pause, choose the truer thing. You're not just communicating more honestly, you're retraining a nervous system response that has been running on automatic since childhood. That's significant work. It deserves to be treated with patience, not judgment. Now let's look at the 3 levels. Honest speech operates at 3 distinct levels. Most people, when they think about honesty, are thinking about only the first one. Understanding all 3 changes what the practice looks like in real life. Level 1, factual honesty. This is the most obvious level. Not saying things that are factually untrue, not misrepresenting event, outcomes, your history, your qualifications. Most people believe they operate at this level already. And mostly, they're right. But even here, there are subtleties worth examining. Technically true statement deployed to create a false impression. The selective disclosure that obscures more than it reveals. The story told accurately, but framed in a way that protects you from a more uncomfortable truth. Factual honesty is the floor. It's necessary, but it's not sufficient. So let's look at level 2, the experiential honesty. This is where most of the gap lives. Experiential honesty is the alignment between your actual inner experience and what you express. How do you actually feel versus what you say you feel? What something is actually like for you versus the socially acceptable version you offer. This is the I'm fine when you're not. This sounds great when it doesn't. The performed enthusiasm for the plan you have significant reservation about. The agreement with the room's consensus when your actual view is different. None of these are dramatic lies. Each one is small, but they accumulate, and their accumulation is what creates. Experiential honesty doesn't require oversharing. It doesn't mean turning every how are you into a therapy session or every professional interaction into a feeling debrief. It means in the moment that matter, with the people who matter, saying the truer things, even when the truer thing is uncomfortable, even when it risks a response you'd rather avoid. For example, actually, I'm struggling a bit this week. That's experiential honesty. It doesn't require elaboration. It just requires accuracy. Level 3, intentional honesty. This is the deepest level and the one almost nobody talks about. Intentional honesty is the alignment between your actual motivations and what you claim your motivations to be. Why are you really doing this? What do you actually want from this interaction? What are you actually trying to achieve? Not the stated reason, the real one. Most of us have a significant gap at this level. We tell ourselves and others that we're acting from generosity when we're acting from fear of rejection, that we're being helpful when we're managing our own anxiety, that we're making this sacrifice freely when we're making it to secure an outcome we won't admit we want. Intentional honesty requires a level of self-knowledge that the practice in this series are designed to build. You can't be honest about your motivations if you don't know what they are. The honest inventory, the pattern tracking, the deliberate stillness, they all feed into this level. And this level is where the most significant liberation lives. Because when your stated motivation aligns with your actual motivation, when you stop doing things for undisclosed reasons and start saying clearly what you want and why, your relationships and your interactions become radically simpler. Not easier necessarily, simpler, less layered, less managed. There's a specific quality of clarity that comes from this level of honest speech that nothing else produces. The progression. Don't try to work all three levels at once. Start with level 2, experiential honesty. It's where the most accessible work is. Level 3 becomes available naturally as the other practices deepen. Now let's look at the mechanics. Here's how to actually do this in daily life, not as a philosophy, as a concrete moment-to-moment practice. Step 1, notice the moments of divergence. There is a specific moment, brief, often almost imperceptible, between what you actually think or feel and what you are about to say, a kind of internal fork in the road. Most people have crossed that fork so many times, so automatically, that they don't notice it anymore. The performed thing just comes out. The real things never get a hearing. The first stage of this practice is simply learning to notice the fork. Not to change what you do at it yet, just to see it. For the first week of practicing honest speech, that's the assignment. Just notice. How many times per day does the fork appear? In what kind of situations? With which people? About which topic? The noticing alone is revelatory. Most people discover the fork appears far more frequently than they realize. Step 2, pause at the fork. Once you can reliably notice the moment of divergence, the next step is to introduce a pause. Not a long pause, a breath, 2 seconds. Enough to create a small gap between the reflex and the response. In that gap, a question. Is what I'm about to say true for me? Not, is it kind? Not, is it appropriate? Not, is it what they want to hear? Is it true for me? Step 3, find the smaller, truer thing. If the answer is no or even uncertain, the next step is to find out what is true. And here I want to be precise about something. The alternative to the performed thing is not always the full, unfiltered truth. Sometimes the full truth isn't appropriate to the context. Sometimes it would cause damage disproportionate to the value. What you're looking for is the smallest true thing, the minimum unit of honesty that closes the gap without being weaponized or inappropriate. Actually, I have some reservation about that. That's a smaller true thing. You don't have to deliver the full reservation in that moment. I'm not sure I agree with that. Smaller true thing, no elaboration required initially. I need to think about that before I commit. Smaller true thing, truthful, boundaried, and available. The smaller true thing is always available if you're willing to look for it. It just requires the willingness to tolerate the small discomfort of saying something real into a situation that was expecting something performed. Step 4, tolerate the response. This is a step most people bail on. You say the smaller true thing, there's a beat of silence or a look or a response that's slightly cooler than you have gotten from the performed version. And the conditioned reflex fires. Walk it back, soften it, manage the reaction, make the discomfort stop. The practice is to stay with the discomfort rather than managing it, to let the discomfort stand without immediately cushioning it. Not harshly, not immovably, but with enough steadiness to let the real communication complete. This is where the nervous system retraining actually happens. In that moment of tolerating response to the true thing, that's the rep. That's where the practice lives. Now let's look at hard cases. I want to address this situation where honest speech gets complicated. Because there are real hard cases, and pretending otherwise would be its own kind of dishonesty. Hard case number 1. Professional context with real stakes. What about when speaking honestly could genuinely cost you something? The job, the client, the professional relationship. This is real and it deserves a real answer. Honest speech doesn't require professional martyrdom. There are contexts when full experiential honesty is genuinely not appropriate. Not because you're performing, but because the relationship or the context isn't one that warrants that level of disclosure. The distinction to make is between strategic discretion and habitual suppression. Strategic discretion is a conscious choice about what to share with whom in what context. That's judgment. That's appropriate. Habitual suppression is the automatic silencing of your actual experience, regardless of context, driven by fear rather than by judgment. One is a choice, the other is compulsion. The practice is about the compulsion, not the choice. Hard case number 2. Relationship where honesty has historically been unsafe. Some people are practicing honest speech inside relationship, family relationship especially, where real honesty historically has been met with punishment, withdrawal, or escalation. This is not a simple case, and I won't pretend it is. What I'll say is this. The practice of honest speech doesn't require you to be honest with everyone equally. It requires you to be honest with yourself first, to at least know clearly and without self-deception what you actually think and feel, even if the context doesn't allow you to express it. Sitting with not knowing is its own form of honest speech. And in a culture that treats uncertainty as weakness, choosing it deliberately is genuinely countercultural. What changes? And I close. I want to close by telling you what actually changes when you practice this consistently. Not what should change in theory, but what actually changes over time in practice. Your relationships stratifies. Some relationships will deepen significantly when you bring more of yourself to them. The people who were responding to the performance, who actually wanted a real version of you and were just receiving the performed one, will move closer. Some relationship will become uncomfortable. The ones that were built on or dependent on the performance, that weren't really about you, but about the role you were playing. That stratification is uncomfortable and clarifying in equal measure. You will end up with few relationships that are more real. For most people, after the initial discomfort, that turns out to be exactly the exchange they needed. Your decisions improves. When you're honest about what you actually want, what you actually think, what you actually value, you make decisions from reality rather than from the performed version of it. Decisions made from your actual interior are more aligned with your actual life, which sounds obvious, but most people are making significant life decisions from a version of themselves that isn't quite real. The career that looks right but feels hollow. The relationship that checks the boxes but doesn't reach you. The life that photographs well but doesn't sustain you. Honest speech, practiced consistently, gradually closes the distance between the life you're living and the life that's actually yours to live. Your relationship with yourself changes. This is the one that's surprised me most. When you stop performing, when the exterior and the interior begin to align, something happens to the quality of your own company. The self-alienation that comes from chronic misalignment begins to lift. You start to recognize yourself more clearly, to trust your own perception, to feel present in your life in a way that's hard to describe if you haven't experienced it. It's not dramatic. It doesn't announce itself. It's more like a gradual setting into your own skin. A quiet sense of, this is actually me. This is actually my life. After years of performance, that feeling is extraordinary in its ordinariness. I'll end with this. Of all the practices in this series, the honest inventory, the pattern tracking, the deliberate stillness, honest speech is the one with the shortest feedback loop. You don't have to wait 90 days to see the patterns. You don't have to sit in uncertainty for weeks. You get the feedback immediately, in the room, in real time. Every time you say the smaller, truer thing or stay with the response, something in you registers it. Something that has been waiting for that for a long time. You don't have to transform overnight. You don't have to become someone radically different or confrontational or uncomfortably transparent. You just have to find the four, pause at it, and say the small thing, truer thing. One conversation at a time. That's the whole practice.